I'm Bill Roaster. My connection with Rich was through birds and birding, the Chemung Valley Audubon Society, the New York State Ornithological Association, which was formerly known as the Federation of New York State Bird Clubs. And I just want to comment on a couple of the hymns that we're doing this morning. In the Garden is very appropriate. The Chemung Valley Audubon Society was a spin-off of the Elmira Garden Club back in 1950. Of course, Rich was a gardener. The first time I ever heard that hymn, I decided that that was the most beautiful song ever. Of course, I was only about 3 years old, but I haven't really changed my mind about that. The other one is Eyes on the Sparrow we're going to do. That's very appropriate since our connection with birds. That's a really famous hymn. That was performed in one of the Sister Act movies. It was also performed in one of the episodes of Quantum Leap. It was written by a lady right here in Elmira after she visited another lady here in Elmira. That lady was so sick or disabled that she couldn't get out of her house. And in spite of that, she seemed to be very upbeat about life and happy. And that surprised her visitor. And her visitor asked her why. And she pointed out the window and she said, "Do you see that sparrow?" She said, "Yes." And very likely, I think that sparrow was probably a house sparrow. It would be real common back in the 1800s when this was written. And the house sparrow is the sparrow that Jesus is probably talking about. And he mentions sparrows because they're very common in the Middle East as well. They were brought to this country from Europe. And when we birders make a list of birds that we'd like to see, there's quite a few sparrows that are pretty high on the list, but the house sparrow is right down at the bottom. It's not the bird that we like to look for. So the lady who had the illnesses, she said, "Do you see that sparrow? I know God's watching that sparrow," because he said so in the scriptures. And so I know he's watching me. I first met Rich at a monthly meeting of the Chemung Valley Audubon Society. It must have been a March meeting, because during the traditional reading of the bird checklist to solicit reports of birds seen in the previous month, Wilfred Howard reported him already seeing the year's first robin. Wilfred was a retired English teacher who spent all her time looking for birds and gardening. She was deservedly recognized as Chemung County's best birder. When she reported her robin, a loud "What?" came from the audience. It was Rich, the newbie, challenging the county's expert on her identification of the robin. No one ever dared challenge Wilfred on one of her identifications, let alone of the common American robin. I could feel everyone take a deep breath and turn toward Wilfred to see how she was going to react. After a moment's hesitation, she just laughed at Rich, and all was well. I think I've heard that "what?" many times over the years. Usually Rich followed it up with a comment that made everybody laugh. Rich had a wonderful sense of humor, and I wish I had recorded all the funny things that he had said. I didn't, and don't have a good memory for such things. Fortunately, Rich volunteered to write the quarterly Finger Lakes Region reports for the Kingbird, Journal of the Federation of New York State Bird Clubs. Rich wrote the reports for 9 seasons and worked some of his humor into them. The regional reports always started with an analysis of the weather. Rich began the spring 1984 report with, "Spring in our region was normal, completely unpredictable." The summer 1985 report began, "It was so dry that kingfishers were forced to feed on the lawns next to the robins." Well, a little exaggerated, but precipitation was sparse in our region. Rich did his regional report writing while New York State was finishing up its first breeding bird atlas, a 5 to 6 year effort by volunteer birders to record evidence of bird species nesting in each of the thousands of blocks that together cover the entire state. This year we're finishing up the 3rd breeding bird atlas. He included some of his experiences in the summer 1985 report. Many of us who were involved in finishing the Breeding Bird Atlas project can agree that some breeding confirmations come by sheer luck. Your editor would like to share his experiences this summer with 3 elusive species. 1, he had never seen a purple martin in Chemung County until he went golfing on a course he had never played before and found 3 active purple martin houses. 2, while testing the brakes on his camper in an elementary school parking lot, he spotted a cliff swallow gathering mud, followed it, and found 19 nests attached to the school. 3, thought he heard a worm-eating warbler singing on a steep hillside, but put off making the long climb for 3 weeks. When he came back to conquer the hill, he found the warbler feeding 3 young at the bottom, only a few feet from the highway. This was the first breeding confirmation for our region. If only all the birds were that easy. On second thought, we'd probably miss the blood, sweat, and tears shed these last 6 years, wouldn't we? When Rich was still a new birder, he and attorney John Alexander accompanied me on a spring hike up a hill that we knew as Old Baldy, so they could practice their breeding plumage to warbler identification. I think we both learned how to identify confusing fall warblers by helping Wilfred Howard sort through the 3,000 dead birds that she had picked up at the base of the WATM TV tower. That was, let's see, other page from there, I think. That's, those birds collided with the tower over over 4 rainy September mornings, which led to their demise. Rich learned quickly and soon surpassed my bird identification skills. He had sharp eyes, excellent hearing, and a good memory for the bird sounds and behaviors that he observed. As news of Rich's passing spread among the Chemung Valley Audubon Society board members, they shared some memories. Our president, Anita Seberg, wrote, Rich was an educator, a conservationist, and a longtime, much-loved member of CVAS. He served on the board of directors and committees and participated in bird counts, work days, field trips, outreach events, book club, and more. I might add that before Anita's time, Rich had served as the club's treasurer and president. Anita had a connection to Rich and Joan beyond birds in Chemung Valley Audubon. When Joan retired from her microbiology job at Arnold Ogden, Anita was Joan's replacement. Corresponding Secretary Candy Reed shared that the fondest memories of Rich's is yes to volunteering at the May 22nd, that was last year, Birding is for Everybody event. He and Joan sat at the question and answer table, conversing with folks about birds and possible other nature and environmental topics. That is the keepsake of my memory of Rich. Recording Secretary Suzanne Giffen wrote, this is sad news indeed. I wish I was available this Saturday, but I will be out of town. If anyone attends, please convey my deepest condolences. Board member Christine Brown wrote, it is indeed sad news. My heart goes out to Joan. I'm not available to attend the visitation or service Saturday. Please share my condolences to Joan. Bass board member Jim White shared that Marie and I are very sad. We did not know Rich long, but his wry sense of humor and commitment to CBS were memorable. I admired his birding ability. He was a great birder. Marie's thoughts are with Joan. And my wife, whose name also was Joan, alerted me to Rich's passing as she was traveling to San Francisco to get her grandsons and bring them here for a visit. She's on her way to the airport right now to come home. She keeps texting me thoughts about Rich and Joan. On Memories Night, it was enjoyable listening to him share his bird and travel slides. He took pictures of some funny things along their travels. And I remember him showing a picture of a ring-billed gull once and sharing how his kids at school thought it was a very beautiful bird and it surprised him how much they saw that. He was doing a birding with them. Rich had a very definite underappreciation for gulls, and so it was much to his chagrin that his students thought that was the most beautiful bird. One more thing, he had a contagious laugh. He laughed a lot, even though he came across serious at times. Be sure to tell Joan Clements that I am sorry I can't be at their funeral, and my prayers and thoughts are with her and the rest of the family. Be sure to tell her if she needs anything, not to hesitate to let us know. Let her know that Rich touched many lives and was encouraging to those lives he touched, including ours. Well, I wish that I could have birded with Rich a lot more in recent years, but I know he was very busy with church and often went out of town to visit his children. Imagine that. He put God and family ahead of me. I think that's great. Now that I'm getting up there in years, time is really flying by fast. I figure I'll be seeing Rich before I know it. Maybe he'll be able to carve out a little of eternity to go birding with me, if there are birds in heaven. We could always go angel watching. That's got to be interesting. God, I suppose you don't plague the folks up there with all our silliness down here. But let Rich know I'll be along soon, and tell him to see about getting us something that works.